Psalm 51, this is, in my opinion, this is David's most gut level, even most emotional psalm. There are others that are very emotional and very visceral, but this, well, have mercy on me, O God, because of your unfailing love, because of your great compassion. Blot out the stain of my sins. I think in our world, we generally, we really just don't take sin very seriously. I mean, sin is, we don't even use the word very often. Misjudgment, indiscretion, mistake. Well, okay, there are several different, I mean, there's thousands, maybe millions of varieties of sin, but in terms of classifying them, they basically fit into two buckets: sins of omission and sins of commission. Meaning, omission sins are when I didn't do something that I should have, and commission being things that I did that I knew I shouldn't have, or that I shouldn't have done whether I knew it or not. And there are even times that I sin and don't realize that I have sinned. Those aren't very big. I mean, the number of those in an individual's life, an average person's life, Christian's life, they're not very big. We don't very often accidentally sin. Excuse me. Much more of the time, we know what we're doing, but our, what psychologists call our self-regulation, which the Bible calls self-control, just goes AWOL, or we reject it. There's times I'm told, I've been educated and read that there are times when sin is missing the mark. Okay. Then there are times in my life where sin has been, I'm not even looking at the target. I'm right? Okay. Well, David, let's kind of, I don't want to be judgmental. I mean, what good would that do? Besides, the man's dead. So let's be observational. Think with me about what would David's mental processes have been when he was on the rooftop. He saw Bathsheba and then hauled her into his palace and had sex with her. Okay, speaking from a male perspective, I know that a beautiful woman is generally attractive to most women. I don't fault David for that. His noticing her, I don't think that's not a sin. To be tempted is not even a sin, but to follow through on the temptation, that's obviously the sin. So how did he get there? Well, again, we don't know the details. So this is all conjecture. If God handed me the pen and said, okay, write the script for this is how I would write it. David looks out. He sees a woman who he may have actually known who she was, because Uriah, her husband, was one of David's mighty men. whom he would have known. Did he have a relationship with her? Don't know. He sees her, though. He's attracted. And we don't even know how much of her he sees. But certainly he sees enough of her to say, I want some of that. Was there a conflict in his mind? Should I got to look away. I've got, how many wives did he have? He had half a dozen other wives and many concubines. So, and his other wives were quite beautiful. Well, it, in my opinion, comes down pure and simple. Lust. He gave lust its way. Think about what lust is. Lust is obsessive desire. When a man lusts after a woman or a woman after a man, this is not that they notice. That's not lust. Where lust enters the picture is when the desire continues and spins. And with David, lust, well, that's what pushed the button, and he sent somebody to get her and bring her into his palace. That, I'm sure he was saying, I'll just have a conversation with her and admire her beauty. There's nothing wrong with that, surely. Well, I suppose if that could be pulled off, and that's all it was, okay. Honestly, a man with normal levels of testosterone will find that maybe not impossible, but very nearly so. And David certainly found it impossible. It was not that he looked over at her naked body next to him that he had just pulled out of and thought, how did this happen? No. This was the result of his initiation. Bathsheba didn't just knock on the door and say, hey, big boy, you want some? I know this sounds, okay, I don't intend to be flippant. I'm just saying there are very real sexual temptations in the world today, and we, no more than David, can afford to be casual about them. And we've got to call it what it is. To be tempted is not sin, but when we follow through on the temptation, that is sin. One of the biggest blights on the church today is pornography. I have read a statistic that 80% of the men in an average congregation view pornography, and that between 30 and 50% of them are actually addicted to it. Now, how they come up with that statistic, I don't know, but I don't have too much trouble believing that's probably true. The number of pastors who struggle with pornography is like in the 50 percentile. Why is that? Okay, there's a bunch of contributing factors. So I don't think I can just say, well, this is why. This is the bottom line. I do know this. I'll say it again. A man with normal levels of testosterone has a predisposition to be attracted with desire toward women that he finds attractive. Is that a sin? No. That's a gift from God. Because without this, there would only have been Adam and Eve, and that's it. The human race would have perished. We populated the earth and then repopulated it, at least to a large degree, because of that gift. But it's a gift that has to be exercised within a strong parameter, within clear boundaries. God left no doubt the boundary within which we can act on that desire. And it is a singular relationship, marriage. In Matthew chapter 5, I like what Dallas Willard calls, most of us call it the Sermon on the Mount, and he calls it a talk on the hill. Because I don't think, Jesus didn't, there was not a song service and an offering, and then Jesus introduced and steps up to it. No. He just started talking. And this multitude of people who had followed him because they wanted to hear him talk, they listened. And one of the things he talks about is the sin of lust in the heart, adultery in the heart. But he also makes it very clear that God's design and his desire was that one man would be married to a woman for her and his entire life, and that the only thing that could dissolve that would be adultery. And I think it should be also stated that it is not required that adultery would dissolve the marriage. It's merely permitted. All right, so the point is, having the desire is not evil. It's part of how God built us and wired us. But when that desire takes over, when it becomes an obsessive desire, that's sin. David sinned with obsessive desire and then with following it to its conclusion. And that's not all. He had Bathsheba's husband, Uriah, murdered for all practical purposes. Wow. And he pushed it away. He pushed the reality of that out of his field of vision, right? Well, Uriah's dead. That's too bad. I will do the honorable thing. I will make his widow my wife. Oh, and by the way, she has this 9-pound premature baby. Nathan confronts him. I talked about the story, and finally, God engages his conscience. It's not that God was waiting to do that. It's that David had rejected his conscience. And now, finally, when Nathan confronts him, you are the man. David is devastated. And he realizes he has stained his soul with sin. And he cries out to God, cleanse me, blot out the stain of my sin. We got to talk some more about that next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.